Welcome to this product walkthrough. In this video, we'll be taking you through some of the main features and functionality of one of our most exciting products, MYOB Advanced. Our aim is to give you a brief overview and showcase how the product can fulfill your business needs. My name is Chris and I'm your host for this video. I'm the Product Marketing Manager for MYOB Advanced. Joining me is my learned colleague Nick. Nick is a product specialist here at MYOB, an expert on all of our enterprise products, having been with the business for over 7 years.
That's all from me. I'll now leave in the capable hands of Nick, who will take you through the product walkthrough.
Now when it comes to MYOB Advanced, it's accessible via any type of browser, so it is a cloud-based SaaS solution. So that means that whatever browser you're using, whether it's Chrome, Firefox, Safari or IE, you can access it as long as you've got internet connection, and it can be accessed via multiple devices, whether you're using your tablet or even your phone or even your laptop. Now in terms of the system itself, the system is designed to lend itself to growing size businesses, and it means that you can actually set up the company however you want it. And what I mean by that is that if I sign in as my user, you can see that it presents me with a couple of options. So I can potentially have multiple companies within the one site itself. So I can choose to have a New Zealand and a Australian based company, and it then allows me to sign in, and based on the user it means that I have access to both companies, as you can see from here. Now that means that if you are wanting to completely separate the companies in terms of your customers, your suppliers, your stock items, your GL codes, then it means that you have two completely separate entities. But it also does mean that if you wanted to, you could then have intercompany, and you could have a top level company which allows you to then report in whatever currency you want to see, and all of the transactions flow into there. Now when I say it's a flexible system in terms of the company size, what I mean by that is that I could simply have a New Zealand company, but I could also utilize a section which is called branches. Now branches could lend themselves to just being the branches within my New Zealand company, in this case Christchurch, Auckland and Wellington, or if I wanted to, I could actually lend them into being different companies per se. So if I looked at my organisation structure and looked at my branches, you can see that on my Christchurch branch I could potentially put in a different GST number, I could have a different company name. So for all intents and purposes, as long as they are under the same jurisdiction of New Zealand, they can be entirely separate companies but within the one database. Now in terms of that, it just means that you can report tax based on those different companies as long as you have different GST numbers. Now that then means that it lends itself to, instead of having multiple companies, you could have multiple branches based on that. Now the other part in which branches lends itself is that whatever user you log in as, you can set a default branch for that user. Now the reason for that is that you can then, when I'm doing whatever transaction or whatever document I'm creating, it means that you can see that the branch column dictates and shows where this is getting apportioned to. Now it also means if we're using multi-branch, then we can split it across different branches, so we could have a marketing cost, for example, that then goes from the Auckland branch and the Christchurch branch and also the Wellington branch. So we've got that split on the one document going off to the different areas. Now in terms of that as well, it means that when we come to our financial reporting, if I look at my profit and loss report, for example, it then means that I can run either a profit and loss report based on multiple companies if I wanted to, or I could actually show it for just a single branch within this single company. And if I just run it for that, you can see here, this is my Auckland profit and loss. Now when it comes to the financial element within Advanced Business, this is really the core part of the system, and it is a very flexible structure which allows you to set it up as complex or as simple as you want it to be. Now it means that if I wanted to look at it from a simple perspective, I can set up my chart of accounts and I can then assign them against the different areas, so against my customers, my suppliers, my stock items, my employees for the expenses, and I can assign them against those relevant records. And then it means that that will draw through and it will actually use those for when it does the GL postings. Now it means if I want to set up for accounts receivable, for example, we can use what we call classes, or customer classes in this case, and we can actually show a European customer actually will be assigned to this accounts receivable foreign account, or in terms of sales it means that it'll go to this income sales account. Now the next level up is in regards to the sub accounts, and the sub accounts means that I can then, now the next level up is in regards to the sub accounts. Now the sub accounts are a fully customizable segment that we can actually set in the system, and if I go to this area here you can see that I've set mine up as a segment with 3 digits and 2 digits, and it means that I can actually say that this one is for customer services and for hardware maintenance. Now this means that I can have an extra level of detail in my reporting, and I can assign this against my employee for expenses or for the sales. Or even under the accounts receivable I can assign it under a salesperson, and we can see that the sales will get posted to that sub account. Now what this ultimately means is that when it comes down to your reporting, it means you get a better level of detailed reporting. Now the other elements within the financial area is that you can actually have a full currency management system. So what it means in terms of that is, if I look at my accounts receivable and customer summary, I can actually trade in different currencies. So you can see here that this bank is in US dollars and these are in AU dollars, but I can then just untick split by currency, so I can now see that we have local ending balances and local New Zealand dollar balances. Now this means that I can then send out my different statements in multi-currency or just on a single currency, and I can also take payments in multi-currency as well based on the bank accounts. Now one of the other things that you can do as well within the system is that you can set up your recurring transactions, not only for your journal side of things, but I can also set that up for accounts payable and even accounts receivable if I choose to. So any bills that come in that constantly come in, I can set up a recurring transaction to do that. Now factor in that we can also use a method called allocations, which allows us to then say, for this GL account I want to separate it off into either multiple sub-accounts or even multiple branches. So if I receive a cleaning bill, it means it'll go off to the different branches and be assigned automatically. Now we can also, if you want to and choose to, for the accounts receivable side of things, we have a deferred revenue which all links to the accounts receivable area if you choose to do that as well. Now the other thing in terms of the financial system is that you have full flexibility over what actually happens, and when I mean that, when I say that, I mean that we can then choose what gets released, whether they get released automatically and get posted directly to the general ledger, or you have that individual flexibility to say I want to check them before they go through. Now you also have control as well over when periods are closed and when they're actually active. So for example, if you want to keep the accounts payable open and the GL open for that period at the end of the month, and then you can actually close off the accounts receivable area, so you've got that extra flexibility yet again. Now the other thing as well is that you have ledger control. So you can have ledgers, an actual ledger for your general ledger, but also you can have multiple budget ledgers. And the budget ledgers mean that I can then set up different budgets, and then when it comes to reporting I can show those budgets in the case of optimistic forecast versus actual. Now, all of this and all of this detail then means that in terms of financial reporting, we have a very powerful financial reporting report builder, and it means that if I do a profit and loss report, you can see that from here I can edit and I can choose to request certain things, so start accounts, start sub accounts, so I can actually run the reports based on sub accounts or even branches. And then it also means that if I run the report, I get an extra level of detail out of the box, and it means that if I wanted to look at my sales, I instantly get the sub-account segmentation, and I can even drill directly into this sub-account and see the extra level of detail based on that. So that's basically a little bit of a show of what is in the general ledger side of things. Now what I want to show you is in regards to the productivity tools that we have within MYOB Advanced. The best way to show you that to start off with is under the Organisation and Communication area and under this Tasks area. Now Tasks displays us all the tasks that we have assigned for ourselves or other people have assigned for us to do, and it lists them so we can see that I have calls to check that the pricing is good for this opportunity. Now what I could also look at as well is my events, and my events are showing me the diary entries that have been set up by, yet again, by myself or other people, and it gives me a list of things that I have to actually do today, this week, or even this month. Now this area is probably better highlighted if I go into my organisation and communicate and customer management area and go under opportunities. Now if I drill into this opportunity, you can see we've got an activities tab that displays all of the activities linked to this opportunity, and this is very similar in terms of sales orders, purchase orders, even things like quotes or even projects themselves. Now from here I can see that I've set up an online visit, I've sent the pricing, and then I've got to go and actually do my installation planning, and if I click on that, what it does is it shows me that I've set up a time and an end time. I can set up a priority and a category if I choose, which you would normally be used to, and I can also invite other people, so Jenny would be attending this with Michael. Now from here, if I go into the switch options in another opportunity, we can see under the activities tab that I've actually got a task, and when it comes to tasks, they're a little bit different to events, as you would imagine, and those allow me to actually set up what is the completion of this, have I actually done it. It also allows me to put in more information, so they've said call back in 6 months, and in this case it means I can then just simply go complete and follow up, and what it should do is it'll pre-populate with more information, and I can then say call to check pricing is good, and I can even set it and go forward into September, and I can set that to actually be in there, and it will appear in my task list to do. Now in this case the one that was originally in there is set to be completed. Now the other area in terms of our productivity tools is actually kind of centered around this area called time and expenses. Now time and expenses can be used in several different methods, and if we're just doing direct expense receipts and claims for employees and paying them via AP bills, we can use that. If we're just doing timesheets, for example, we can put in timesheets and they can enter them in and they can be approved by whoever. Now what we can also do though, we can actually use it in projects, so we have a projects accounting module, and we also have under finance we have a customer contracts module. Now the customer contracts module then lends itself into an area called cases, and if I go into this case, we can actually see that this is a case that has been opened by one of our customers who has or has not a contract, and we can then create an activity. So we have slow internet speed and we've checked the connection, and then from this activity we can then see that it's a work item, and we've actually put that we spent 30 minutes on this, and we will only bill them for 15 minutes. But what this means is that once I've actually set it, I can then, if I choose to, under my finance accounts receivable area, I can then run my contract billing, and it means that I can run it based on that contract and actually charge them a certain rate based on their support contract or based on labour that I set up. Now, in a similar kind of vein, what I can actually do under organisation and projects is I can actually create a project, and I can actually track all of my expenses and all of my hours. Now, the way in which this works is I can set up a project, I can set up who's in charge of the project, and I can also set up billing rules and allocation rules. Now, these allow me to then bill and charge on any expenses or any materials, or even I can charge on any time spent by my consultants. Now, I can set up individual tasks within that project, and then from there I can just go into my time and expenses, and if I chose to, I could actually go in and put in an employee time card, and I can simply go in and pick out an employee, and I can then assign hours against different projects and project tasks from here, and I can say this is the regular hours, this is my project, and this is my project task, and then I can put in that I had 1 hour. Now, that then allows me to then save it, and I can then go and submit it, and at this point it's actually saying that it's subject to approval. So the system allows you to actually set up approval mapping to do things like employee time cards, or even expense receipts, or even if I go back to the actual project itself, you can see that this project is actually pending approval, and hence why you can't assign anything against it. So the system allows us to actually see approvals, and back to our organisation communication area, it actually has an approvals part, which if I had any approvals to make would appear within here. So that really concludes our productivity tools section of MYOB Advanced. Now, in this section we're going to look at the sales process within MYOB Advanced. Now, the best way to highlight this is under our distribution and sales order area, and if I click on this sales order form, we can see the actual sales order itself. Now, within MYOB Advanced, the sales order process is driven by what we call our order types, and our order types is the ability to allow your business to work out how you actually generate your sales and how you process your sales. So in the example of using a sales order type, that would be used for a sales and shipment based business, which means that you raise sales orders and then ship them directly out. Or you could actually use a cash sale option, which allows you to take money at the time on the sales order, and instead of generating a picking slip, you can just take the stock out of your store and just give it straight across the counter. Now, you can use different variations, and you can use more than one order type if you need, based on your business, so it means it's fully flexible to handle how you actually trade. Now, also you can use a customer portal, which is another element within the system, and that means that you can add contacts for your customers and make them give them access to the customer portal to raise their own orders, which directly come into the system. Now, another element that you can do as well is, if you want to actually do things like drop ships or purchasing to order, you can actually mark each individual line. So for example, if you haven't got any stock, you could raise and say purchase to order to bring it in and then ship it, or I can raise a drop shipment which then sends it off to your supplier to then supply the customer directly. Now, when it comes to actually generating and adding them into the system, you can simply either add in a single sales order, and you can also use this feature called add stock item, which from here I can actually pick out a warehouse, so Auckland for example, and I can then see what stock I've currently got to sell to this customer, Or I can even go sold since, and that allows me then just to pick and see what they actually bought from us. So you can see from here that this external hard drive, they bought 3 of them in August of 2015. So we can actually see a history based on what they've previously ordered from us. Now, like I said before, when you raise a sales order, you can either raise it singular, or I can upload via this load records from file. So if they've provided a CSV file or an Excel file, I can just load it in via that. Or we can utilize our system integration area, which allows us to import en masse multiple orders, or we could even use our API to feed it in from other systems if we need to. Now, the system will also work with Magento. There is an add-on that actually ties into any websites that use the Magento system. Now, when it comes to actually shipping, we can simply create a single shipment directly from an order. But what we can also do is, from this Processes tab, if I click on Process Orders, this is where MYOB Advanced comes into its own. Now, the reason I say this is, from this screen I can simply pick out a single warehouse, Auckland in this case, or if I choose to, I can actually pick out a single customer, so right corners, and if I go Process All, it would generate a single shipment or multiple shipments based on what you've set up. Now, the beauty of this is that if I use this Add Automation, it now allows me to then say that every hour I can then generate a shipment, and you can see that it'll generate a shipment for right corn, and we can save that if we choose to, and that will run behind the scenes. Now, also, if you add into that I can then go to the Process Shipments area and print off pick lists or labels, or even a shipment confirmation to add to the boxes that are going out. Now, like I said before, this is yet again automatable, so we can actually add that in, and it means that it will generate them for you and send them through to your warehouse. Now, the last step of it as well is we can then process our invoices, and we can then choose to email them out directly once we've actually confirmed the shipment in the warehouse itself. Now, all of this is obviously good to know because it means that you can speed up the process and actually give you back extra time in the process that you would normally have to manually do. Now, the other thing I just want to point out when it comes to the sales process is the CRM system. Now, within MYOB Advanced, we have the ability to actually use our customer management area, which is the CRM package within our software. Now, this means that we can actually generate leads, so we can generate and monitor leads. So, for example, Keith Abbott, we can import these directly into the system or enter them in manually, and then from here I can assign them what we call a lead class, which triggers a list of questions to be answered by whoever's processing these leads. So in this instance, you can see that we have what industry, number of employees, what are they looking for. Now, these attributes can then be changed based on what type of class we have. Now, from here, a lead can then be converted to be a contact within an existing business, or they can be generated into what we call a business account, which is in essence a prospect. Now, from that we can then generate an opportunity, and that means that we can go in and we can actually generate an opportunity for this business account, so for O'Neill's Trading, and we can then add in certain information, but we can also assign it a class ID, so an opportunity class ID in this case, which is hardware, and yet again there are attributes based on that class. So what operating system are they using, and what type of hardware do they actually want? Now, from here I can then choose under the Products tab to give them a more defined price based on what they've asked for. So I can see that they've asked for a server and a couple of desktops, and then from that I can then raise activities to monitor and track my contact for this opportunity. Now, if they then call up and say we'd like to go ahead with that, we can then convert it and create a sales order within our distribution area. Now this just means that you can track all of your opportunities and then convert them across. Now the other thing that you can do as well is the system has a simplified marketing campaigns area, and that means that I can generate a marketing campaign and actually track how many leads are against that marketing campaign, or in fact how many opportunities have we got and how many opportunities have actually been converted into sales orders. When it comes to the inventory management area within MYOB Advanced, it's really one of the strong points of the system. And the way in which it's actually configured is, firstly, we can look at the warehouse management area, and this allows us to actually set up multiple warehouses, so based on what we actually need to have in there. And you can see in here I've got Auckland and Christchurch, and I've even got an outsourced warehouse. Now within those warehouses we can tag them to a branch, which means that for a balance sheet we can actually then track it for that individual branch. But also what we can do for the different warehouses is we can actually set up, if we choose to, default GL accounts. So in this case the inventory on hand could be going to a different GL account based on each warehouse. Now the other thing that we can do within a warehouse is we can actually set up locations, and locations are either individual areas within the warehouse itself, or bays, or even they can be bin codes. Now this means that when we receive them in, we can bring them into these different locations and ship them out of the different locations, and we can even dictate as well, in the case of this loading bay, that we can sell from here but we can't actually receipt into here. Now the other thing that we can do is we can also set a pick priority if we choose to say that when we're generating our pick lists for shipping, it will pick this location first ahead of this location. Now when it comes down to the stock management of the system, there are two areas in which we can actually look at, and one is non-stock items, so they're actually two separate areas. And with non-stock items, these can be different things, such as if you're charging for an hourly rate for consultation, you can set that up and charge out a rate for the customers, or if you choose to, you can actually set up, for example, expenses. So if you were actually doing a telecom expense, you can set that up with the correct general ledger account to automatically go on to the AP bill. Now when it comes down to the stock side of things, we have actually got a different area to do with stock items, and when you add a stock item, you then add an item class, and an item class is, for all intents and purposes, a stock group. So in this case I have desktops and laptops and printers, and what that allows me to do is it allows me to set defaults for this product. Now those defaults can include general ledger accounts, as we saw a moment ago on the warehouse, but in this case we could set a sales account or even a cost of goods sales account against it. We can also set a valuation method, so of either standard, average, FIFO or specific, and this means for each individual item we can actually track that cost, and it tracks it on a warehouse level as well. Now the other thing we can do as well is we can actually set up base units and units of measure. So if we're stocking this item, then you can see that we stock it as PCs and we sell it as PCs, but when we purchase as a pallet, which has a conversion factor of 12 PCs. Now when it comes to the actual stocking of items, there are several methods in which we can actually get stock into the system. We can either enter a manual receipt, or we can do it via our purchase orders area, or our third option, which is under create purchase orders, which is a pool of all of the methods of ordering, and then it can generate either a single purchase order or multiple purchase orders to different suppliers. Now the way in which this works is it can be either based on the fact that we are raising sales orders and tagging them as back-to-back ordering, so we can send it directly from our supplier to the customer, or we could even run a routine which is our prepare replenishment, and that will automatically calculate based on what we've set up in the system to bring through what stock we actually need. Now what this means is that if I have on my replenishment info tab, I have a replenishment class, I can set it up for each warehouse with their own preferred supplier, and each warehouse can have its different supplier based on where they are in the country. And you can also set up as well different classes. So if you wanted to receive transfers from a main warehouse to other warehouses, you could do that as well, or just purchase direct to that warehouse. Now you can also put that in manually, or you can get the system to calculate it based on the history, and it will populate that for you based on your previous sales, and it will actually allow you to say this is what I actually need. Now the other part of the inventory management is all centering around our physical inventory count, or stock takes. Now the stock takes can be set up to do a full inventory count, or we could actually do a monthly inventory count, which is based on a cycle that we can tag against each individual stock item. Or if I really wanted to, I could actually do it based on what we call our stock item class, and it then means that for laptops, these are all of my laptops currently within the Auckland warehouse, and I can proceed via that. Now as you can see, we've got lot and serial tracking, which allows us to actually set up on a product whether or not it is serial tracked or whether or not it is lot tracked, and we can actually have different we can have a single variation on each stock item, and it means that when we then issue it out, we can choose how to issue it, so whether yet again it's a FIFO basis, or even if we want to do expirations, especially for things like lots, where we can then send out the items before they expire, or find out which ones are going to expire. Now the other thing that we can also do is we can also run off stock valuation reports, as you would imagine, and the way in which we do this is we have default reports that are already in the system, but for normal stock checking we can actually check via our generic inquiry. And if we have a look at an inventory summary report, and I just pick this item here, it'll automatically show you what items we've got in which warehouses, and if I click on expand by lot and serial number, it will then give us extra details based on each individual serial number. Now if we wanted to simply see an inventory valuation report, we could just click on that, and we could just then run it for a warehouse for Auckland, and it now gives us the information of the total cost for Auckland. And that concludes the inventory management portion.